Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and it is Sunday, so we are doing breaches of the week. And this week in data breaches on this wonderfully rainy day here in Chicago was actually kind of shorter than most weeks, but still pretty significant. So with that, let's dive right in. And as always, I want to thank the people that sent me a lot of this information, and that would be Jade Dance, Jennifer Strack, Jason Delavin, and Steve Harper. Thank you very much, and please keep sending those tips my way. And first things first, we're going to start in India with Airtel. Now, Airtel is India's second largest telecom provider, and this past Friday denied a breach of its systems following reports of an alleged security lapse that caused concern amongst its customers. Now, the telecom group, which also sells productivity and security solutions to businesses, said that it conducted a quote-unquote thorough investigation and found that there had been no breach whatsoever into Airtel's systems. The telecom giant, which has nearly 375 million subscribers across India, dismissed media reports about this breach as, quote, nothing short of a desperate attempt to tarnish Airtel's reputation by vested interests, end quote. And quite frankly, I hope they're right, because I never hope any company has to go through a data breach. So heads up, if you're one of my listeners or followers in India, if you're using Airtel, you might want to keep an eye on this one. Moving on, let's talk about health tech company here in the United States known as Health Equity. They suffered a data breach, though unconnected to other recent attacks. Now, the company revealed this attack in an 8K filing with the SEC earlier this week, saying that attackers had stolen the quote-unquote protected health information of some customers. Now, according to the filing, the company earlier this year uncovered anomalous behavior connected to a business partner's personal device. They also determined that the partner's account specifically, was compromised by an attacker who used the account to access member information, including that protected health info. So if you have anything to do with Health Equity, heads up to you. Moving on, let's head on down to Alabama and talk about the State Department of Education. In other words, the Alabama Department of Education, and here we are. So they announced this past Wednesday that they were the victims of a data breach. Now, the extent of that breach is not yet known, but the attackers may have personal data on students and employees as well. That means they could have potential access to full names, phone numbers, email addresses, home addresses, and even social security numbers. Now, this one actually kind of surprises me, in part because back in, I believe it was late 2022, I actually had a speaking engagement for the Alabama Department of Education at their annual conference, basically down on the coast. It was a beautiful area that I was in, and I got to drive through a good chunk of Alabama from Mobile down to the coast, and I learned quite a bit about what the state of Alabama is doing for their cybersecurity stances in terms of hardware and software that they're running. And they're on it in a way that I see a lot of Department of Educations simply not. They're not. So Alabama's been rocking it out. And I think it really goes to show you that even if you're buying some of the best defense that money can buy, you can still end up with issues and problems, because at the end of the day, odds are somebody might have fallen for something, and here we go. So heads up to you, Alabama Department of Education. Best of luck. I had a great time with you guys a couple of years ago. Moving on. Let's talk about Twilio. This is an update. I mentioned them the other week. And remember, the recent data breach affecting Twilio may have been a rather unfortunate, or rather there's some unfortunate news, because it might have taken a turn after a new report claimed that the attackers can now single out Authy users from the archives that were taken. Now, the Shiny Hunters Hacking Collective recently said that it stole 33 million phone numbers from Twilio, and the company has now revealed that those attackers were able to determine which of those phone numbers are used for its Authy service. So if you were using Authy, the authenticator app, which usually comes recommended, heads up to you, because they might have your phone number and therefore a backup way of authentication. So here we are. And with that, let's move on to our mini segment. If you just spent money on cybersecurity, you wouldn't have your reputation ruined, and you wouldn't be getting sued. And with that, let's start with Evolve Bank, who I literally mentioned in last week's breaches of the week, because consumers hit Evolve Bank with 3 different lawsuits on the same day last week after cyber criminals stole customer information in a major data breach that the plaintiffs say was preventable. Now, each of these recent 3 class action lawsuits against Evolve Bank and Trust were filed on June 28th, 2 in Arkansas federal court, where Evolve is, and 1 in Tennessee federal court. Now, the plaintiffs sued Evolve for negligence and other breaches of state and federal law after Evolve disclosed they were hit on a cyber attack excuse me, on June 26th. And for the record, I'm still getting over COVID, so I apologize for my voice. Obviously, not a good look for Evolve Bank, and here we are. Moving on, the next one is Geisinger, which I also mentioned in the last week or two, and the number of federal lawsuits over their data breach that may have affected more than 1 million of Geisinger Health System patients has risen to a total of 6, with the latest basically coming from basically a woman in Lebanon County, which I believe is in Tennessee. Now, Amber Lopez of Myerstown, like the others, is hoping that her complaint against Geisinger and Nuance Communications of Burlington, Massachusetts, will be certified as a class action. The focus of the case is the data breach that Geisinger had discovered on November 29 of last year, but patients weren't notified until June 24th, like a week or two ago. That is a huge lapse in compliance law. So obviously we're going to see what happens there, but Geisinger may be on the hook for a lot more. And that ends our mini segment. Like I said, it was a less volume week this week, but if Geisinger or Evolve had just actually spent on proper cybersecurity, including training, I wouldn't be talking about them and they wouldn't be getting sued. Moving on, back to our regular breaches, let's talk about Patelco Credit Union, apparently one of the largest credit unions on the west coast of the United States. They confirmed they were hit with ransomware in a statement this past Monday. In an update on Tuesday, they told customers to expect intermittent outages at ATMs throughout the recovery process and pledged to reimburse those who incurred late fees as a result of the outages, meaning you can't pay your bill. They're going to retract that late fee because, quite frankly, you couldn't pay it, assuming you were going to, because of the website. So Patelco had nearly 500,000 members and dozens of branches across the state of California, and customers were reporting that they were unable to take out more than $500 via ATMs and could not access their Patelco accounts online. Nothing panics the population like not being able to access their money. Now, hundreds of their customers went on to Facebook to express confusion about the credit union's messages and then question why some of the statements made in emails and then the statements made on the websites seem to conflict each other. So we're going to see what happens here. But if you're a customer of Patelco in California, we're going to see what happens. Moving on, let's talk about Ethereum, the cryptocurrency, specifically their mailing list provider, because a threat actor compromised the mailing list provider of Ethereum and sent to 35,794 addresses a phishing email with a link to a malicious site that was running a crypto drainer, meaning they're trying to rip you off. So Ethereum disclosed the incident in a blog post this past week and said that it had no material impact on its users. The message that was sent out, specifically the phishing message, lured recipients to a malicious website with an announcement of a collaboration with Lido, that's LIDO, and invited them to take advantage of a 6.8 annual percentage yield that was essentially staked on Ethereum. Click here to enjoy it. And of course, that was malicious, trying to steal your data, trying to steal your money. So heads up to you, if you've gotten emails from Ethereum's mailing list, you might want to ignore them for the near future. Moving on. Let's talk about the University Hospital Center in Zagreb, which is Croatia's largest hospital. Beautiful country, by the way. Now, the Lockbit ransomware gang claimed responsibility for a cyber attack on basically the hospital, the University Hospital in Zagreb, which forced it to shut down its systems for a day. Now, the group claims to have gained access to patient employee information, medical records, organ and donor data, and contracts signed with external companies. So if you are using Hospital Center in Zagreb, again, Croatia's largest hospital, you definitely want to check in with Croatian authorities. Moving on, let's talk about life insurance company Landmark Admin. Never heard of them. Now, sending notifications to an unknown number of individuals about a data breach that is impacting their personal, medical, and insurance information. Now, Landmark Admin says that it detected this incident on May 13th, found evidence that the attackers had accessed specific files, and we are talking about names, address, dates of birth, social security, driver's license, passport, financial account numbers, tax IDs, medical information, health insurance policy information, and life and annuity policy information as well. So, if you use Landmark Admin for your life insurance needs, you definitely want to check in. Moving on, let's head back over to India and talk about a company known as Concept World. Now, installers for 3 different software products that were developed by Concept World have been Trojanized to distribute information stealing malware, meaning if you've been downloading Notezilla, RecentX, and CopyWiz. According to Rapid7, the cybersecurity firm, basically you're getting yourself infected, and they discovered the supply chain compromise on June 18th of this year. Now, this issue has since been remediated by Concept World, according to them, as of June 24th, within 12 hours of responsible disclosure. So we're going to see what happens there, but if you are rocking older versions of Notezilla, RecentX, or CopyWiz, you definitely want to get them out of your system. Go clean yourself out. Moving on, let's head up to the Great White North and talk about Canadian router manufacturer Mercu. Now, Bleeping Computer, the publication, has verified that the help desk of the portal of Mercu is currently sending MetaMask phishing emails in response to newly filed support tickets in what appears to be a compromise of Mercu's infrastructure. Now, as soon as the online form is submitted to them, basically the user, meaning if you've submitted a ticket to Mercu on a router issue, you would receive back an email entitled MetaMask, mandatory MetaMask account update required. Now, Mercu provides, for the record, equipment to Canadian and European internet service providers and networking companies that include Start.ca, FiberStream, Insys, RealNet, Orion Telecom, and Kelcom. Kelcom. So, if you use any of those providers whatsoever or have a Mercu router, before you submit a ticket to them, you might want to check in with your internet service provider first. Moving on. Let's talk about the Florida Health Department. Now, I just learned something new today because apparently they were the first accredited public health system in the entire United States. I had no idea. Now, they unfortunately reported falling victim to a ransomware attack by Ransom Hub. That's a notorious group that has been making the rounds lately. Now, the attackers claim to have accessed a staggering 100 gigabytes of organizational data and have threatened to publish stolen information within the next 3 to 4 days. So if you have anything to do with the Florida Department of Health, one, you're the oldest department. That's kind of cool in terms of health. But two, definitely check in. And Ransom Hub also hit, for the record, NTT Data Romania division. So NTT being Nippon Telephone and Telegraph, basically one of the largest service providers out there in the world. The Romanian division was also targeted by Ransom Hub. And Ransom Hub is claiming to have accessed 230 gigabytes of data from NTT Data Romania division. And so they're planning on publishing that within a few days or so. And so we're going to see what happens, but heads up to you if you use NTT Romania or NTT Data Romania for all your needs in Romania. And finally, we have two finalies for you this week. Like I said, it was a shorter week, even though I went looking. First one we're going to talk about is Tile. Now, this is owned by Life360. You may know it as its new name, AirTag, which essentially ripped off the entire Tile concept. But here we are. Now, an attacker breached the system behind the Tile device trackers and stole customer data, including names, addresses, emails, and phone numbers as well. Now, according to reporting from 404 Media, the attacker was able to collect customer information by accessing a tool made for responding to law enforcement requests about Tile trackers. The stolen data did not include precise Tile location data. So Life360, as I mentioned, owns Tile, and they published basically a statement this week, basically authored by CEO Chris Halls, that acknowledged this attack. Now, Halls confirmed that data included Tile tracker IDs and said that the attacker attempted to extort Life360 and the company reported it to law enforcement. Now, the attacker reportedly gained access using login credentials supposedly belonging to a former Tile employee. In other words, did they not shut the guy down when he quit or was fired? I mean, that's what we're talking about here, right? So 404 Media was provided screenshots by the attacker indicating they had access to various internal tools designed to transfer ownership of a Tile tracker, add admin accounts, and send messages to Tile users. In other words, Tile, or Life360 in this case, may have very well dropped the ball by simply not having good standards and practices for offboarding employees. Whether this person was fired, quit, hit by a bus, whatever it was, this person should have been disabled from the network. And if this was left out there for an attacker to, let's say, use a password spraying account to get into this and then gain access into their internal systems, that's a massive problem. And so we're going to see what happens here, but Life360 is a huge one as well. And one of the reasons why it's a finally is that Life360 offers monitoring services that a lot of parents use to track their kids, meaning above and beyond the integrated controls that Apple and Google give you for iPhone and Android, you can have Life360, which gives you more accurate GPS tracking and other things as well. And so by virtue of that, if they were able to gain access to that, they could potentially start tracking the location of anybody that is in the ecosystem, meaning a zillion kids. So We're going to see what happens with this, but this is potentially a huge one, and you know I'll keep you up to date. And the last finally we've got here is basically check your accounts, because the largest password leak ever just happened. And it seems like every 6 months to a year, I am doing one of these in Breaches of the Week. So, are you reusing passwords for multiple sites? If you're a follower and listener of mine, you shouldn't be, because you know better. But if you are, go change everything now, because you should never do that. Here's what's happening. Researchers at Cyber News have uncovered a massive trove of almost 10 billion passwords on a popular hacking forum in what they are calling the largest password compilation ever. Now, this file, which was named rocku2024.txt, was posted on July 4th, because why not, by somebody going by the name Obamacare, and contains an insane 9,949,575,739 unique plain text passwords, and the user only joined the forum in late May, but they've posted data from other breaches as well. Now, according to Cyber News, this RockU 2024 file is a, quote, mix of old and new data breaches, end quote. And this is what happens. They aggregate a whole bunch of passwords left and right, but they're all unique, meaning there's no reuse here. So that's a huge trove. So it's not necessarily a new breach or necessarily an old breach, but it is multiple breaches that basically are comprising this 9.9, almost 10 billion passwords. So compiling all these into one massive searchable database obviously then heightens the risk of credential stuffing attacks, because anybody can go download it and then just load up the 10 billion unique passwords and start slamming everything, especially when they're linked to, let's say, login. So don't reuse your passwords, for the love of God. And if you have one password for like Facebook and also your bank, go change them. That's a very insecure way to live. I've got unique passwords for absolutely everything, multi-factor enabled on absolutely everything, and on my business stuff, we even have identity access management systems in place to ensure that, Nick from Moscow, quote unquote, can't get in. So here we are. Those are your breaches of the week. Were you affected? Yeah, you probably were, just given how many passwords just got dumped, but we'll see what happens. And here we are. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please attempt to stay private. Thanks, everybody.